Thank you. Right, good morning everyone, and welcome to this One Nucleus Life Science Marketing Group in collaboration with Transcrip. Today our webinar is about making conferences work for your business. As with all Life Science Marketing Group events, the aim is to share the knowledge of our network and members, so do set your chat messages to everyone, and we will cover questions throughout the presentation. I'm delighted to be joined today by Paul Branthwaite, Senior Partner at Transcrip. Before beginning, we'd be grateful if you could stay on mute during the presentation, and a quick reminder that we're recording the session. And Paul's presentation will be available post-event and also as part of the One Nucleus on-demand content. So over to you, Paul. Thanks.
Thanks, Natalie and Alithia for organising this. And one of my colleagues, as I say, is in the background checking to make sure that I don't say anything egregious, but here we go. So making conferences work for your business context, particularly for service sector companies, conferences are absolutely vital. And it is essentially all about preparation, which you'll see in a second. So myself, I have been in the business since 1979, so I predate probably all of you in terms of being in the industry, and it's taught me a lot about what happens and how things work, etc., etc. And Transcrip is a consultancy. We obviously provide, as many of you know, lots of interesting stuff for companies, both big and small, but we have been relatively successful in terms of building our client base. We currently have something more than 200 clients, 60% of them are ex-UK, and conferences are particularly important for us for engendering new contacts, new business, stroking old clients, etc., etc. And there is a cost to that, and it is a key investment for time and money. Obviously, attending these events in person, it has been true to say that in the last year or so, with the pandemic, the way of attending conferences has morphed markedly and made it actually significantly less expensive to participate. And I'll talk about partnering meetings in context of that as we go through. Key thing, and I think the premise for everybody getting into business development in our sector, is to be absolutely clear what your deliverables are, and therefore the return on the investment has a target, and then from that flows what you should do to make that event work for you. And I'm particularly going to look at some aspects of the conferences which you should particularly pay attention to. So who goes? Why? Well, I broke it down into really 4 pieces, and I'm sure somebody else can come up with an idea of one other reason for attending conferences. Obviously, if it's in Hawaii, that brings up a whole different reason for attending. But essentially, deal making, and you can operate either from the buy side or the sell side. There is a requirement for a lot of people who go to particularly therapeutic area conferences for an upskilling element, and attending some of the sessions, even those which are marketing oriented, can be really quite enlightening. And obviously you get to know what companies are trying to achieve if they're doing sessions on their work to date, which gives you new targets. Networking, absolutely. Ashton will tell you I've got something like 7,500 connections on LinkedIn, which is a great platform for networking or breaking ground in connecting with people. But networking either face-to-face or within the context of a conference, if you are in a BD setting, is clearly vital, because you never know when you might be useful to somebody, and conversely, you never know when somebody might be useful for you. And that's what networking is about. It's about getting to know people, hopefully getting them to like you, and then be in touch with them for the next 20, 30 years, as I've done with a lot of my connections. And then you have branding. Now, some of it is branding yourself in terms of getting a profile. And I talk about branding in terms of individuals. It's about trust and being useful to the community. Obviously, you brand your company, and then there's a specific product or service you need to brand as well. So why go? I'm going to use an illustration of Transcrip, because obviously that's something I've been doing for the last 14 years. But it is probably the most difficult, namely trying to find and cut deals on the sales side in the service sector. Because, selling a service is against selling a widget. A widget is a tangible. A service is, to a large extent, intangible, and therefore more difficult to quantify and put in terms of this is why you should buy it, sort of thing. And I look at these conference exercises as falling into really two categories. One is I need immediate business, therefore I'm looking to cut a deal on the day, which is highly unlikely in the service sector, I have to tell you. And then the other one is the longer term, which is the profiling, gaining trust piece. And if I tell you, and some of you who are working in the service sector will recognize this, we've just cut a deal with a client who we have been nurturing for the last 5 years. It's a big project. It's the ramifications are for us potentially manifold, and it's burgeoning like absolutely crazy. But it has taken us 5 years from initial contact to get to this position. And I can talk about others where it's taken 3.5 years and stuff like that. So that long-term piece, what that tells you is that BD in a service sector context is a long-term patient process, which you don't get discouraged, because a lot of it will come good. So obviously getting to the right event is critically important, because you're going to spend time and money on doing it. And I and my team, and Ashton, who's on this call, always ensures that we look at the first principles every time. So it is about what you're trying to achieve. Can you define the deliverables in a sense of, I want to do this, and have that in a hierarchy that shows you which are the most important, and therefore why is this conference important in that context, and just as importantly, if you're used to going to something like Genesis, which we attend as part of the One Nucleus roundabout every year since the year dot, even with that, we always say, has something changed to make this less viable as a venue? And if it's still good to go to, then we go to it. But we have to be really quite harsh with the conference round, because we only have a limited resource of people, and obviously limited resource in terms of spend. So let's quantify that. What is the real cost of attending a conference? Well, for us, because we are expertise led, that time out is a real problem. When one of our guys doesn't go to isn't working but going to a conference, we're looking at a capital cost loss of around £3,000 per day per person, and that's simply because they're not earning. The cost of events can be huge. If you look at JPM, which we have attended for many years in San Francisco, the cost of hotels and the cost of flights double in that week. So we are looking at taking, Ashton will correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we take 4 people to San Francisco, we're looking at an actual cash cost of around £30,000, which is not small. And then you have all of the ancillary costs of taxis and all the rest of that stuff that goes into it. So you really have to cost that attendance and from that derive a return on investment, which you can quantify to set that cost against. And we try, we don't necessarily always succeed, we try to be strict and objective in terms of what's likely to be a good investment. But if we're going to something new, or somebody who's been to one of these events prior, get a sense of how good those events are, because the conference organizers are really good at selling you the opportunity, but some of them are frankly disappointing, and I'm sure all of us have faced that from time to time. So once you've gained your conference, you need to know who's going, but more importantly, you need to know what you're going to do with them when you get there. Now, one of the upsides of the pandemic, if there are any, is that the partnering applications at conferences are now virtually universal. Some are better than others, and without pointing fingers at one Nucleus, some are better than one Nucleus's partnering system, but we know that, we just work with it. The basic issue is some of the partnering software packages actually make it very easy. They tell you which companies are there. It tells you what they do. It tells you what they're looking for. And it tells you if they don't want to have anything sold to them, which is just as important. But there are ways around that, and I'll get to that. If nothing else, I hope this session will allow you to think beyond the block, as it were. And then, obviously, your colleagues can help you when drawing up target lists, and actually individuals who they may know to connect with. So you have a pre-connection if you're starting cold with a particular company or target. Define them. Most conference organizers will give you a list of attendees, or at least which companies are attending. If they won't give you that, question whether you should be there at all, because frankly, if you're dealing with purely random meetings at these events, the chances of a real return on investment are poor, to be honest. And frankly, we do go to conferences, particularly therapeutic area conferences, where the partnering is either non-existent or poor. And there are ways to work conferences which don't rely on the partnering system, but the partnering system by and far is the easiest way to get some face time with individuals who you might want to influence. So if you're talking about new contacts, what you do is it's about what you're trying to, or the ideas you're trying to get across to that list has to be differentiating, i.e. you have to have something that they can't get anywhere else, either easily or in bulk, because otherwise the chances of you getting to talk to them are small. What we do is obviously we rummage around people that we know, etc. That's easy. But if we are talking to people who we've never connected with before, what we do is we set up a tailored list of written approaches that we can use the partnering system in the first instance, or LinkedIn, or any other way of finding a way to talk to somebody in a written sense that is actually tailored to them, both in terms of the shouldn't have happened. Both in terms of if there's a generic or a genre of clients that you're looking to. So as an example, you might be looking for companies who've got an oncology portfolio. Well, you tailor the approach to them based on what we know that they're doing in oncology, so that they immediately get that, you know what you're talking about, you know what they're trying to do, and you make a reason for connecting. And then I prefer, where time allows, to make that actually individualized to that individual person. So sometimes that takes a bit of research. You find them on LinkedIn, you find what they've done, you see if there's any previous connection with you or what you've done. So an example, I used to work on a drug called metronidazole. I linked up with somebody who had worked on trying to keep patients alive after deep gut surgery. There was a personal connection because we worked in the same space. I used that as the lever to get to talk to this person, which then led to a conversation at the event. It's that sort of thing that you try to use as well. And obviously, if you've talked to them previously, you have to absolutely remember that you have talked to them, because that's embarrassing when they say, well, I only met you 6 months ago and you'd forgotten about it. But also, if any decisions were made in terms of, okay, let's reconnect when you've got past your phase 2B, or yeah, we're not ready to talk to you, but we might be in 6 months. You use that as the excuse, as it were, for reconnecting. So it's, as I say, to encapsulate that is know who you're talking to, know what you want to talk about, find a way to hook them, get that hook in, and use it to have that next conversation. Any questions to date? Lisa, you're looking stunned. You're on mute, yeah.
No questions, but yeah, really interesting. Enjoying it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. You're just saying that. Anyway, moving on. So I think that this is a truism in life. This is not just about making connections with folk, but how you come across and how you represent your company is important. But also the approach you take should reflect what the audience you're talking to needs, or at least you think they need. That may morph with discussion, but we'll get to that in on. I'm the world's worst one of this, and Ashton will tell you I prevaricate and pontificate and wobble on for minutes on end. But in reality, when your time is limited to talk to people, you really need to get to the point on who you are and what you do, and find out what they do is more important. It's listening is more important than talking. But one thing I can tell you, I hate when I get into conversations with people who are trying to sell to me, is lists of things that you can do. What's the point? You can provide that and on. What you're trying to do is, in this instance, discover what their need now or in the relatively near future is, and concentrate on that. So it should all be about them rather than about you, until you get to the point where you're trying to say, right, we can do this and this will help you in this circumstance. So be concise. You have to assume that your audience will understand terminology. Don't dumb down. If they have a question, they'll ask it. But clearly, it's very difficult sometimes, and we have this problem ourselves at Transcrip. Don't define yourself by saying what you are not. And we all fall into that trap by trying to differentiate by saying, well, we're not like them. Well, yeah, but what are you? That's the key thing. And then the other thing that I think really does resonate, using examples of things which are either identical to or similar to the problem and how you fixed it for somebody else, really, really, really resonates. And if necessary, you can, with people's permission, use them as reference points if people want to check it out down the line. But you, of course, need to get that agreement up front. Asking for a meeting. This is what the whole point about one-to-one meetings is about, is tell them what you think you know about what they are doing. If they correct you, that's fine. Don't think that you have to be completely and utterly accurate, the fact is, if they redefine what they are doing, that actually is starting the conversation and allows you to take advantage of that. The other thing is that it is about what's their gain, not what you're trying to sell per se. So again, personalize it in terms of how it will make either this individual look good, or it will fix a problem that they have. It is not about you saying, right, I got this, this, and this, what can you use? It is, you have this problem, this is what we can bring to fix it. And then if you find, and I try to do this, I'm not saying I'm really always 100% about this, but if they refuse a connection and they give you a reason, use that reason to try and get a reconnection at a later time, which is easily done nowadays with the various media that we can do. So don't necessarily take a no as a no. If a no is a no, accept it. You say, no, I don't want to talk to you, you're rubbish. There's no point in arguing that particular event. But if they say, look, I'm infernally busy, I'm booked out, just suggest actually, well, you know, in 3 weeks' time, when things have died down, you've sorted out what's come out of the meeting, why don't we have a reconnection anyway, just to have a chat, a bit of light relief. I often use that term with people who I'm not necessarily going to sell to them on that occasion, but some people just like to have a chat because they decompressors, because they're up to their armpits in alligators. And that's certainly true of people in the line teams in companies, particularly of those who I've known for 20, 30 years. A chat to talk about their career is as good a lever as any. So getting around restrictions. We're a service company and we get all the time this, I'm sorry, we're not talking to service companies, but what I do, we are good at this, I have to say, in overall terms. We have a really good hit rate in getting to talk to people, is because we actually suggest something that will give value to them without any expectation that we're going to get anything back from them. And I'll expand on that in a little while. But finding that hook depends on what you know about them and how they will respond to that connection. So you can leverage other things that you do. Can you do something for free? Within reason. I think that's laying bait on the water. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And I always say that the trick is gaining interest when they aren't even looking, and that's that can bring real benefit down the line. And I'm going to use a specific example, which may not apply to your situation, but can apply when we're talking with certainly the smaller companies who, as you know, are always looking for money. And part and parcel of what we do as an organization is we also work on the buy side. So we do due diligence on companies at one level for venture capital groups and financiers and stuff like that. What it also means is that we can make introductions, and we make those introductions for free. We don't charge for making introductions. And we have gained a reputation for doing that. And that allows us to say, we see you're in your Series A, or you've done your Series A, you're looking for your Series B round. Do you want an introduction to venture capital groups or anything of that nature, which is out with the service sector provision? And we get a lot of companies who will take that and say, actually, let's have a conversation. And then once you've got that conversation going, then you can broaden that. But obviously, if you offer that service, you can caveat it by saying, I need to know what you're doing to see if this is a project that might be ripe for our financial friends, which people understand. But if you can make that connection, then you do it. And that's worked extremely well for us over the last 5 or 6 years in getting through those barriers of being a service sector company. But you have to find your own hook. You have to find something which gives them value, because people like stuff that is of value that they don't necessarily have to pay for. And then the other thing is, don't waste people's time. There is no point talking to people for which they cannot provide you a service and you cannot provide them a service in the service sector. It's just an absolute waste of time. The only caveat I have that is if they're doing something which is very interesting and you simply have a personal interest, and you may be able to connect them with other people, but don't necessarily go into that conversation expecting to get anything out of that or give anything out of that. And then it's up to them whether they want to talk to you or not. But sometimes you just hear interesting stuff which is intellectually engaging. Any other questions at this point, Lisa? You're the only one whose picture I can see. Everybody else is on not on camera. There you go. So I will pick on you. So introductions. So you've actually got 20 to 30 minutes of their time, and you get into the intro part. So what I try to do very succinctly is tell them a story of who I am. And that is entirely oriented towards ensuring that they are confident you know what you're doing. Otherwise, it's you hit a barrier already. I'm not the most PC of people, and people will tell you that of me. I do try to be sensitive to cultural and to mores, etc. But I think the key thing is it's not easy to change who you are, to be chameleon-like. So be who you are, just be the best person of who you are. And I know it's trite, but I see it so much. For God's sake, smile. You know, it's if you're in a stressful situation, which some of these are, if you're inexperienced at this sort of game. But you know, we are a human animal that reacts to non-verbal signals, and the biggest non-verbal signal is I like you because I'm smiling at you, and people like to be liked, and it's I don't care how hard-nosed they are, they still like to be liked. So give them a little grin. So the other thing that I think I've learned over many years is that you may have a brief, but things will come out of left field, and you need to be able to react to that. So I always like to start with a suggested agenda, but they're the person I'm trying to extract money from. So you have to give them an opportunity to talk about what they think is important, and that's fine and dandy. Again, and I said earlier, you know, sales, and this is a selling situation, is about gaining information as well as putting it across. So use questions, don't go straight into a spiel, allow the flow of ideas to go where it will, bring it back to what you want to talk to, absolutely, if you need to, but make it about them. And as I say, don't just churn out a list of services. If you have a spiel and it works, use it when it's appropriate. And if it's not appropriate, don't use it. There's always another opportunity, you know, 6 months, year down the line to go that route. The key thing about the first meeting is introductions, getting a degree of trust going, and then the rest will flow from that. So let's talk about exhibitions. Mixed bag here. If you're exhibiting as a company, and you see a lot of law firms, etc., at biotech meetings with they've got their stand, they've got a couple of their more personable lawyers standing at the stand, attracting the attention of passers-by. Pros and cons exhibiting as a company. The pro is you've got your logo up, you've got the branding stuff, you've got a place for people to come and meet you if you've prearranged that, etc. The downside is can be interminably boring. It can be unproductive in the sense that depending where you are in the exhibition, if they've parked you in a place where there isn't much footprint, as we call it, the number of people who will actually find you are small. And if you're in a big conference like DIA or something like that, 95% of the people milling around the exhibitions are no use to you at all. They want the freebies, they want the goodies, they'll take up your time, and they're not the people you want to talk to. It's a problem. So you have to make a decision as to whether the branding is sufficient and whether or not the target audience you're getting to are the ones that you want to. But if that's the case and it's positive, then go for it. Working the exhibition now falls into a number of parts, but if you think about ASCO, the American Society for Clinical Oncologists, there are something like 30,000 people at that event. Bumping into somebody you really want to talk to randomly are tiny, but if you know how some of these companies work, and this particularly pertains to big pharma, if big pharma's got a stand at ASCO, they will be sending some of their key decision makers to that event, both for CPD, but because obviously there'll be speakers and stuff like that. Most companies have a rule that their top people will spend some time at the stand at the exhibition to be able to talk to KOLs, etc., etc., etc. The nice thing about salespeople at the exhibition stand is that they will almost always know when those individuals you want to talk to will be at the stand. So you immediately narrow down the need to swan around to a specific time and place where you know it is likely that the person that you have targeted will be. And then it's about buttonholing them appropriately. And that's a whole different technique, which I'm not going to go into today. The other thing is that the same is true with speaker slots. So you look at the conference, you see who's speaking, you say, aha, I want to talk to Joe Bloggs. He's speaking on slot X at room Y. Once he has finished speaking and the session is going to an end, the speakers will be milling around talking to each other. Weasel your way into those conversations if you want to talk to an individual and you can't get at him in any other way, or she. That works. Believe me, it works. And the way you do it is that you go to the speaker with a question that has derived from the piece that he or she has just given. So it's not, I'm Joe Bloggs, I want to sell you stuff. It's, ooh, you made an interesting point about tyrosine kinase inhibitors in the new form. What do you think about this? Get them intellectually engaged, and then make hopefully a connection that you can follow up with later. You have a very small period of time to get that across. Swap cards, follow up later. You can't hang on to them for half an hour in situations like that. Networking, it's very important. Keep up in touch with your old friends. You never know when you're going to need them, and conversely, when they're going to need you. What I often find, because of the nature of the career I've had, is I bump into somebody who I worked with previously, and the immediate thing is they say is, "Oh, I need to move. What do you suggest I do?" So you're helping them in their career sense, but that's a good thing because, to put it bluntly, they owe you one. And when they get into their new position, you can use that as a lever to get into another company that you haven't worked with previously. And then people may say, look, in your own colleague pool, they'll say, right, you're going to conference X. I know Jane Bloggs is going to be there, so you have to mix the male-female thing. So Jane Bloggs is going to be there. I know her. She's really good to talk to. We'll set up a meeting. That's relatively rare, I have to say. But that maybe is a reflection on my colleagues rather than anything else. But referrals obviously is something to do as well. I see I'm keeping Lisa smiling, which is obviously I'm doing well here. Anyway, so the ad hoc meetings, you will inevitably bump into people and talk to them, usually in a coffee line, or I've never done this in an elevator. That actually worked, because nothing else, if I try to explain what Transcrip does in an elevator, we'd need to be traveling up that huge one in Dubai before I can get my idea across. So it's coffee lines more usual, or line when you're waiting for the bus to the hotel or something of that nature, or you're sitting next to somebody on the bus or the train or what have you, or the plane. It's amazing how many people going to conferences on a plane you're sitting next to will be going to the same conference. So I try to use because of the nature of what we do, I use a three-word answer. And say, oh, what do you do? And I say, well, fundamentally, we mitigate risk, and that is what Transcrip does. And they obviously come back on that. Well, what does that mean? And then you can go off and talk about other things. But once you've said we mitigate risk, and they say, what do you mean? The next response is, well, let's put it in context of what you do. What are you doing at the moment? So that when you give them the 3 key points, it's referencing what they do. So don't just have 3 key points that are randomly generic, because if what you're discussing is as we discussed this morning, how to re-engineer an entire biotech's operations, you don't talk to that if the person you talk to is actually in the legal division. So it has to be fit for purpose. And then the other thing, and I have to say, some of my colleagues are really rubbish at this. Take business cards with you. Take shed loads of business cards with you. Distribute them freely. Get theirs, or do the app thing on the car on your phone. And if you promise to follow up, you have to follow up. Otherwise, they're going to get hacked off with you. If you eventually bump into them again in a year's time and you hadn't followed up and they'd asked you. And then, as I always say, and Ashton drums into me all the time, the real work starts when the event is finished, because you may have made lots of connections, but you actually have to work those connections in terms of do what you promised to do, whether that's the stuff for free or whether it's stuff in terms of creating a dialogue to work out what you can do with them in the future, and vice versa. So you start, we try to start, it often doesn't happen, we try to start 3 months before a conference. Usually we really get focused 2 months before. The last month is frenetic, and then the 2 months following that is also frenetic. So a conference has a 6-month window, give or take, where you have to be engaged on doing what that conference is required. And on that note, I finished the talking down to thing, if that's the right terminology, and then we can open up the Q&A. So are there any questions, Lisa?
Anyone? If you could unmute.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much, Paul. My question would be is if you've got any tips for someone who is a speaker at a conference from their point of view.
In what sense of what they should put across and what they shouldn't? Or what should you do on either side?
Yeah, I initially thought, or either side, like before and after, but yeah, possibly what they should and shouldn't do as well. Okay. Anything.
Well, obviously, any speaker needs to speak to the truth as they see it. obviously, it's surprising how much slides are usually vetted, but people give away snippets of information which they really shouldn't, and that should be pounced on, because some of that stuff is potentially relevant to a financial oversight, and may have an influence on things like share prices, etc. So you have to be careful. But in terms of before and after, obviously, a speaker can expect to be buttonholed, and don't be surprised by it if somebody comes and gets at them, and it is likely that people will try to get in touch with them before they speak, because they want to arrange a meeting, and that has to be, time is precious, and I've never been one, when I'm in a speaker situation, to not respond to people who want to talk to me, as long as I know what they want to talk to me about, and I think it's relevant for us to have a discussion. Then I will accept that as part and parcel of, I'm on somebody's speaker list. That's what's going to happen. That can be to your advantage, as well as being inundated by people who want to sell you stuff. The other side of it, when you're particularly vulnerable, is when you've just done a talk and you want to talk to your fellow speakers, and you're constantly being badgered by people who want to talk to you. You either say, look, give me a business card, let's swap data, we'll talk later. That's the kindest way of putting people off at the time. You have to understand that people have a job to do. It's easy when it's a student. A student comes up at and it's actually lovely when students come up to you and ask, can you help them with this, that, and the other? And I, as one Nucleus will tell you, I do a fair amount of mentorship for newbies in the space. And these are diverse backgrounds. So yes, people who are in business development, that's one side of the equation. People who are relatively senior, another side. But the bit I really, really thoroughly enjoy is talking to somebody who's either doing their PhD or just finished their PhD and is looking for career options. I genuinely enjoy that, because you're talking about helping somebody mold a career, and that's lovely. The warnings again are in terms of you will have limited time, so try to be gracious if you have to put people off. And if they say, can I follow up? I have been blunt on occasion to say, really, there's no point, because nothing you do and nothing I do overlap. So I don't want to waste you. It's about wasting time, your time and their time. If you have to be blunt, but you don't have to be rude about it. And I try not to be rude about it. So either rearranging for another time, letting down gracefully, or sometimes you come across somebody who's just so bloody interesting, you want to talk for hours, and you drag them off for a coffee. Is that the sort of thing you were thinking of, or do you have any specific?
No, that was great. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi Paul, Dragana is here. My camera was on all the time, but you didn't see me, which is good. So thank you very much. It was very interesting. And my question rather is around, you were saying everything from the point of view of services-based companies.
Yeah.
But for example, we are looking for partnerships when we go to conferences. So what do you think should be different? What to focus on? It's more or less, it's very similar. What you said, the way how we are thinking of, but would you recommend maybe focusing on something else in addition?
No, I think the premise is still the same, is that you have to define what your deliverable is. and work it on that basis. And we do form partnerships too, and some of those come from a random conversation about something completely different. It depends what you mean by a partnership. So there's a financial partnership aspect. There's where you have something which is mutually supportive, and from my perspective, that's the best sort of partnership, because it's a win-win scenario. And there are certain areas where we are not particularly strong. Obviously, I shouldn't say that, because we're strong in everything, obviously. But there are certain areas like CMC, or we don't do clinical operations to any level. And we work with a lot of CROs. And some CROs we are very close to, because that we have engendered a level of mutual trust, which we know what they're capable of, and we know that they deliver well, and vice versa. Now, that partnership doesn't necessarily have to be formal, as in a formal alliance, but it could be. And formal alliances often turn out to be more than alliance. They turn out to be where companies merge. Or something of that nature. But to go back to your original question, it's all about what are you trying to get out of that conversation. It is, are you specifically aiming to create a partnership which is a partnership of equals, or a partnership where you are a service partner to an organization, or what have you? Frankly, it all depends. So to push that back to you, what is your situation, and what sort of partnerships are you looking for?
Yes, this would be more financial partnerships. So when each of the party is giving something, so we risk share, basically, developing assets. Okay,
now that's an interesting dichotomy, because there are risk share folds into so many different variations on a theme. So if you are asking a contract house to risk share, i.e. to power your program to a point, but they are effectively going to benefit either in terms of bonuses or in terms of equity, that's one sort of partnership. And the problem for that is that unless you're talking about a very large organization, CRO, for instance, who have flagged that they want to get into this sort of arrangement, most contract houses are willing to take a modicum of risk, but they're not willing to take a full risk share, i.e. they take on all of the costs of doing a development for a percentage of the equity. Very few will go with that unless they have made a significant strategic decision that they are going to morph from being a strict contract house to a mixed contract equity model. And they are few and far between, and some of them have been very badly burnt. So if that's your starting premise, good luck.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, but thank you very much. I mean, similar how I'm thinking, I mean, you need to basically have your deliverables. So what do you want to achieve with this conference, and to whom to talk to, and then you are basically defining a strategy to how you will do this. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I'm very much in favor of the 2 + 2 = 5 equation, where alliances work together, because a couple of things. One is alliances, and they don't necessarily have to be that formal, but alliances that are based on mutual mutual respect, but also mutual advantage, means that you have twice as many eyes looking out for business opportunity at bigger levels than basically singleton groups acting on their own. So, we actively seek and look to talk to groups who do stuff which is augmentational to what we do, because they bring us work and we bring them work. So it's absolutely a win-win. And as I say, 2 + 2 = more than 4 in that scenario.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome. How are we doing for time,
I think
Natalie?
we're coming up to the time. So does anyone have any further questions? Looks like that's it for now, but Paul, thank you so much. That was really interesting. Your depth of experience really shone through, I thought, in that talk. Very valuable.
Get me before I retire. As well.
Thank you so much for your time, and thanks to all our attendees today, and I hope you enjoyed the session. And if you'd like an introduction to Paul, just get in touch with us, and have a lovely day.
And the slides are available if you need them. Okay.
We'll send them on to you. That's right.
Thanks, Lisa. And I need to see the cat again before you sign off.
Oh, she's asleep upside down on the sofa. But when you said about Mancoons, my neighbour has 2 Mancoons and they're absolutely gorgeous. They're just so fluffy. Yeah.
Keeping them groomed is an exercise in futility. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. Take care, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.
And,
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.